Mom, starting with your next paycheck. I'm transferring all your money to my account. That's what my son, Daniel Lewis, told me on a Thursday afternoon while sipping coffee in my kitchen, as if he were offering to take out the trash. He said it slowly, kindly, like a man doing a good deed for a stranger. I am 62 years old. I've paid my bills through layoffs and winters, through double shifts and sore hands. I stared at him and waited for the part where he would laugh and say he was joking. He didn't. He just smiled the calm smile of someone who believes he's already in control. I noticed small things. The way he set his mug exactly in the ring it had left last week, as if my house were a station he passed through, not a home I had built. The way his eyes drifted past me to the hallway, the living room, the television taking inventory. "It's for your own good," he added, and the words floated in the kitchen air like steam, harmless at first, then clinging to everything. I heard my own voice say, "All right, Daniel, if you think that's best," and even I didn't recognize the softness in it. He kissed my forehead quick and mechanical and promised I wouldn't have to worry about a thing. He left the way he always did, confident, hurried keys in hand, already planning the next Friday, when he and his wife, Vanessa, would come expecting dinner, hot and ready as they had for 3 years. When the door closed, the house went very quiet. I looked at the table he just used and at the life I'd spent decades holding together. I realized I had taught my son many things: how to read, how to tie his shoes, how to keep going. Somehow, I had also taught him something I never meant to teach, that I would say yes, even when I should say no. That was the moment I understood love without respect isn't love at all. If you've ever sacrificed everything for someone you love, your sleep, your savings, your health, only to realize they see you as a resource, not a person, then you'll understand what I'm about to say. And if my story sounds familiar, please subscribe to my channel. There are thousands of mothers like me learning finally how to reclaim their peace. I raised Daniel alone. His father, Richard Lewis, left when Daniel was 2. He said he needed to find himself. I never found the part of me he took with him, but I built a life from what was left. I worked days as a secretary, nights cleaning offices. I'd come home to the sound of my boys breathing and tell myself it was worth it, that every sacrifice would buy him a better future. When he was 13, he wanted a pair of $100 sneakers all the other boys had. That was nearly all my grocery money for 2 weeks, but I bought them anyway. He smiled, hugged me, and for a moment, I believed love could fill the spaces money couldn't. At 18, he wanted college private expensive $10,000 a year. I signed the loan papers with trembling hands, promising myself it would all pay off when he became the man I believed he could be. And he did become that man. At least on paper, good job, polished suits, a house, paid in cash. For a while, I thought we'd made it. But when success comes without gratitude, it turns into entitlement. Daniel stayed with me 5 years after graduation, never paying rent, saving every paycheck until he bought that house. I thought he'd finally start helping me, maybe let me rest. Instead, he just stopped visiting as often. After he married Vanessa, his visits turned into routines. Friday dinners, always expecting my cooking, never bringing anything, never saying thank you. I told myself it was love. I told myself it was family. But it wasn't. It was convenience. I didn't see it until he asked for my bank account. That Monday, Daniel came back with a stack of papers. "It's simple, Mom," he said, sliding them across the kitchen table like a contract between strangers. "You just need to sign here, here, and here. It'll make things easier. I'll manage your bills, your salary, everything. You'll never have to worry again." I looked at the forms. Bank authorizations, he called them. But I read the small print, the kind of fine text most people ignore, and felt my stomach turn. It wasn't just access. It was power of attorney. It gave him the right to transfer close or control every dollar I had. Daniel, I said, this says you'd have total control over my money. He nodded, calm as ever. Of course. That way I won't have to ask you for permission every time. It's just practical. Practical. That word echoed in my mind. Practical. For who I held the pen. For a moment, my hand moved toward the line the same way it always had when my son asked me for something. But then I remembered Friday night, his fury when he saw the empty living room, his voice rising, his threat disguised as concern. I set the pen down. Let me think about it, I said. For the first time, irritation cracked through his perfect smile. Mom, there's nothing to think about. But I just nodded and watched him leave, leaving the papers on my table like a trap. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something inside me whispered that this wasn't love. It was a takeover. So the next morning, I went to the bank. Can you show me all recent transactions? I asked the teller. She printed several pages. Line after line, I scanned them until one number stopped me cold, a $1 $200 withdrawal I hadn't made. It was from another branch across town, one I'd never been to. My card was in my wallet, always had been, except for one day 3 months earlier. Daniel had come by while I was in the shower. My purse was in the living room. My card was in that purse. I didn't need anyone to tell me what happened. I already knew. He'd taken my card, copied it, and stolen from me his own mother. The teller asked if I wanted to file a claim. I said I needed time. Not to think no, I already knew the truth, but to gather every piece of it. Because one accusation wasn't enough. I needed proof of the entire pattern. Over the next few nights, I went through everything: bank statements, insurance papers, medical bills. The deeper I dug, the darker it got. There were credit cards I'd never opened, health claims I'd never filed, even a utility account in my name at Daniel's address. He'd built his perfect life on fraud and on me. I sat on the floor, surrounded by papers, shaking. Then, for the first time in years, I stopped crying, because I understood tears wouldn't save me. Evidence would. I didn't confront Daniel. Not yet. A mother's voice is easy to dismiss, but a folder full of documents isn't. So I stayed silent. I smiled when he called. I even texted him a heart emoji, the way mothers do when they still want to believe. But inside I was working. I made copies of every fraudulent document, every statement, every unauthorized charge. I opened a small notebook and wrote everything down. Dates, amounts, places. The truth needed a paper trail, not emotion. 3 days later, I went downtown to meet a lawyer whose ad I clipped from the newspaper, Robert Delgado, Family and Financial Law. Free consultation. He was in his 50s, calm eyes, steady voice. He listened without interrupting while I spoke. When I finished, he said quietly, "Mrs. Lewis, what your son has done isn't just betrayal. It's financial abuse. It's fraud." The word fraud hit like cold water. "If you sign those papers he brought you," he continued, "you're giving him legal power over everything you own. Once that happens, even the police won't be able to help. You'll have handed it over voluntarily." My hands trembled. "I don't want to ruin his life," I whispered. "He's my son." Mr. Delgado leaned forward. "He's already ruining yours. The question is whether you're willing to let him finish." I walked out of that office, holding a folder filled with forms, a fraud claim, a power of attorney revocation instructions to change passwords, PIN codes, and credit locks. I went straight to the bank. I closed the compromised accounts, requested a new debit card, and opened another account in a different bank, one Daniel didn't know existed. For the first time in years, I felt control return to my fingertips, like blood flowing back into a hand that's been asleep too long. That night, Daniel called. His voice was tight, almost rehearsed. "Mom, we need to talk. Come to my house tomorrow. We'll fix this." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Before, I would have said yes. But not anymore. I can't. I told him. I have plans. Plans. What plans? Things that matter to me, I said. Silence. Thick, offended silence. "You're acting strange, Mom," he finally snapped. "This is for your own good. Stop being stubborn." Those words again. "For your own good." I hung up mid-sentence and sat in my kitchen heart, pounding, not from fear, but from clarity. For 62 years, I had believed love meant obedience. That night I realized love without respect is a prison, and I had just walked out of mine. The following Wednesday, I woke to a quiet so deep it almost rang in my ears. No messages from Daniel, no surprise visits, just the sound of my own breathing and the faint ticking of the kitchen clock. For 3 days, that silence sat on my shoulders like a weight, and yet somehow it felt clean. I had changed my passwords, closed the old accounts, even filed the first fraud reports with the help of Mr. Delgado. Every step felt like I was sewing myself back together after years of tearing at the seams. That afternoon, as I was making tea, I heard the low hum of a car engine outside. I looked out the window and saw Daniel's silver sedan. He was stepping out with Vanessa beside him, both wearing the same expression, tight, practiced, unyielding. I took a deep breath and placed the teacup down. I didn't hurry. I didn't panic. I just waited for the doorbell. It rang once, then twice, then 3 times, sharp and impatient. I opened the door but didn't move aside. I stood in the threshold, blocking their way. "We need to talk," Daniel said. His voice had that edge I used to mistake for concern. "I'm listening," I replied. Inside, Mom. "We're not going to stand here like strangers." I shook my head. "Then maybe we should talk like strangers. Whatever you have to say it here." Vanessa crossed her arms. "This is ridiculous, Margaret. You're acting paranoid. We're your family, not your enemies." "Enemies are honest about their hostility," I said softly. "You two hide it behind pretty words." That stunned her for a second. Then Daniel stepped forward, anger flashing across his face. "How dare you talk to my wife like that, after everything we've done for you?" "For me?" I asked. "Everything you've done to me, you mean?" He froze. I pulled a folder from the table by the door, neatly organized papers, highlighted lines, official stamps. I held it against my chest like a shield. "I know Daniel," I said quietly. "I know about the withdrawals, the credit cards, the power bills at your address. I know you've been using my name, my money, and my trust." His eyes widened. Then for a brief second, I saw something flicker there. Panic. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "That's insane," he said, forcing a laugh. "You've been scammed, Mom. Someone probably stole your identity. That's why I wanted to handle your finances, to protect you." I tilted my head slightly. "You mean protect yourself?" His jaw tightened. "No, I mean protect you. You're confused. You don't even know what you're signing half the time. Maybe you should see a doctor." There it was, the card he always played when he was cornered, the senile, confused mother narrative. I smiled, but it wasn't the kind of smile he knew. "I already saw a professional," I said. "A lawyer. He explained everything you've done. In detail." Vanessa's face went pale. "You went to a lawyer?" "Yes. His name is Robert Delgado. And he said that what you did, every unauthorized transfer, every forged account, is fraud." "That's a crime, Daniel." His voice cracked sharp with disbelief. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did." For a moment, the world shrank to the space between us. The son I'd raised, the man I no longer recognized. The boy who once cried over broken toys now stood before me full of rage at being caught. "You owe me," he suddenly shouted, his face red. "You owe me everything. I grew up without a father. I watched you struggle. That was your choice, not mine. You kept me poor. You kept me stuck. You chose that life." The words hit like stones, but they didn't break me this time. I just looked at him, calm, grounded. "You're right," I said. "I did choose it. I chose to raise you alone. I chose to work 2 jobs so you could go to college. I chose to skip meals so you could wear nice shoes. But what I didn't choose was to be robbed by the man I sacrificed everything for." He stared at me, breathing hard, eyes darting like he was searching for a weak spot that no longer existed. Vanessa grabbed his arm. "Let's go," she hissed. "She's lost it. She doesn't even know what she's saying." I laughed softly, the kind of laugh that comes not from amusement, but liberation. "Lost it. No, dear, I finally found it." She sneered, pulling Daniel toward the stairs. "She's already lost," she muttered. "Lost," I echoed. "No, I'm free. There's a difference." They turned and left without another word, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frames on the wall. I stood there, the folder still in my hand, my pulse steady. Outside, I heard the car engine start, then fade into the distance. For a moment, I let the silence fill the room again, the same silence I used to fear. But now it felt like a victory. That night, I got a call from Mr. Delgado. "The banks have confirmed the fraud," he said. "They're closing the false accounts and refunding some of the losses. You have a solid case, Margaret, if you want to press criminal charges." I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat in my empty living room, in a house without a TV, without fancy furniture, but full of something Daniel could never steal: peace. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't broke. I was rich in clarity, in boundaries, in the quiet power of finally saying no. The days after the confrontation were eerily still. No calls, no knocks on the door, no Friday visits demanding dinner. For the first time in years, my house felt like mine. The walls no longer vibrating with someone else's expectations. The silence, once oppressive, now sounded like freedom. I spent those first few mornings doing things I hadn't done in years. I made coffee just for myself. I read the newspaper without rushing. I even played an old jazz record I used to love before my life turned into a schedule built around other people's comfort. But peace has a way of feeling fragile when you've lived too long in chaos. And sure enough, the storm found me again. Not through the door this time, but through a screen. It started one Saturday afternoon. Out of habit, I opened my phone and scrolled through Facebook. The first post that appeared made my stomach twist. There he was, my son Daniel Lewis, smiling at a high-end restaurant, a glass of red wine in his hand, Vanessa beside him, both looking radiant under dim golden lights. The caption read, "Surround yourself with people who add peace to your life, not chaos." Letting go of toxic relationships is the greatest form of self-care. Toxic relationships. I stared at those words for a long time, reading and rereading them, trying to make sense of the audacity. Was this how he saw me now? Not as the woman who built his life with her bare hands, but as the toxicity he'd purified himself from. The comments were even worse. "So proud of you, Dan. It takes courage to set boundaries with negative family members. Protect your peace, brother." People applauded him as if he'd survived abuse, as if I was the abuser. I scrolled through more, post after post, photo after photo. He was constructing a perfect story, a digital lie, polished with filters and hashtags. Pictures of their new house, their renovated kitchen, the expensive garden set. Every caption sounded like a confession written backward. Hard work pays off. Some of us build, others drain. Energy is currency, spend it wisely. Each post gathered dozens of likes, dozens of affirmations. None of them knew that the house they admired had been bought with my stolen credit, my ruined credit score, my years of exhaustion. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling in disbelief until I reached a post that broke something inside me completely. It was an old photo, me holding Daniel when he was maybe 5, both of us laughing at something outside the frame. The caption said, "Sometimes the ones who love you most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. Learning to walk away is love too." I didn't even cry. The pain was too clean for tears, a kind of hollow ache that burned quietly behind the ribs. He had taken not only my money, but my story, the sacred truth of a mother's love, and turned it inside out for sympathy and likes. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself, because I realized something as I scrolled through the endless thread of applause. The world doesn't care about truth. It cares about presentation. And Daniel was a master of presentation. But I didn't need the world. I had the evidence, the dates, the signatures, the law. That night I called Mr. Delgado again. He answered on the second ring. "Robert," I said, "I'm ready." He didn't have to ask what that meant. "All right," he said. "We'll move forward with the lawsuit." The following week, as the legal wheels began to turn, I discovered something else. Several of Daniel's friends had started asking questions. One of them, who still lived in our old neighborhood, messaged me privately, "Mrs. Lewis, I don't know what's happening between you and Daniel, but people are talking. Someone found your name on public financial records. Are you okay?" I typed back slowly. "I'm fine, dear. Just finally setting the record straight." And I meant it. Not just legally, but emotionally. Because every lie he told online stripped away my last illusion about who my son was. There was no fixing this. There was no version of Daniel that I could love without breaking myself in half. Still, I saved the screenshots, every caption, every fake confession. Not out of spite, but as proof. Proof that he'd not only stolen from my accounts, but from my identity. Days passed. The first official notice was served to Daniel's address, a lawsuit for financial fraud and restitution. He didn't answer my calls because I didn't make any. My silence was my final boundary. 3 nights later, my phone buzzed again. A new voicemail, his voice trembling desperate. "Mom, what are you doing? You're going to destroy me. Please, let's talk before this gets worse." Then, another message, angrier. "You think you can win. Everyone will see how crazy you are. You'll regret this." And then the third one, softer than all the rest. "Mom, I just wanted to help. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I listened to them all. Then I deleted them one by one until my inbox was empty. When I looked up, the first light of dawn was touching the window pane, pale and quiet. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel powerless. I felt steady. I felt unshakable. I whispered to myself, "You taught him to speak, Maggie. Now teach him what silence can do." The weeks that followed felt like standing in the eye of a storm, calm on the surface, but knowing that something was unraveling just beyond sight. Mr. Delgado handled everything: filings, bank coordination, evidence, verification. I spent most of my days at home watching the sunlight crawl across the empty spaces where furniture used to be, reminding myself that emptiness can also mean space to breathe. Then one morning, Robert called. "The banks have confirmed it," he said. "Your son forged your signature on 2 credit applications. There's documented proof of $17,000 in fraudulent transactions over 3 years." I sat there quietly, listening to the sound of my own heartbeat. 17,000, I repeated. Not because of the money, but because of the years. The years I spent defending him, explaining away his coldness, excusing his distance. The betrayal wasn't new. It was simply quantified now. Robert continued, "With this evidence, we can proceed with criminal charges. But if you prefer, we can first issue a formal civil demand. Give him one last chance to repay what he stole." I looked at the stack of papers in front of me, proof of every lie, every theft, every manipulation. Part of me still wanted to believe in redemption, that maybe if he saw the evidence, he'd feel something, guilt, shame, recognition. The mother in me still wanted that. But the woman in me, the one who had worked, endured, and survived, knew better. "No," I said. "No more private chances. I want this to be public. I want the truth to have a name." Robert was silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "Understood. We'll file the civil suit first. It will be a matter of public record. When the official documents were delivered to Daniel's house, I didn't see it happen, but I imagined it clearly. Him standing in his doorway, reading line by line, realizing that this time there was no plea, no forgiveness, no invisible safety net waiting to catch him. The first day silence, the second day calls. 27 missed calls by noon. I didn't answer. By the third day, he began leaving voicemails. "Mom, this is crazy. We can fix this. Just tell your lawyer to stop. You're overreacting. It's not as bad as it looks. You're going to ruin my life. You think you can embarrass me like this? I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done." Every new message sounded more frantic, more hollow. His voice cracked between anger and fear. I didn't reply to a single one. Robert once told me silence in law is a statement of power. I finally understood what he meant. 2 weeks later, the silence broke not from me, but from Daniel. He went online again. This time, not with smiling selfies, but with a public statement. A long post filled with half-truths and selective memories. He wrote about a painful misunderstanding and a mother struggling with paranoia. He spoke of his grief over being accused of crimes he didn't commit. He never mentioned numbers or banks or forged documents, only emotions, only vague wounds designed to win sympathy. And it worked for a while. The comments flooded in again. "Stay strong, man. You don't owe anyone your peace. People don't understand how toxic family can be." I watched it unfold my heart, steady this time. Because while the world was busy believing his performance, the real story was being typed in legal ink across court records. Truth had patience. Then suddenly, his posts stopped. No more updates. No more quotes about peace and boundaries. Robert called me the next day, a faint tone of satisfaction in his voice. "His lawyers contacted us," he said. "They want to settle out of court." That meant one thing: they had seen the evidence, and there was no defense strong enough to bury it. The settlement took 3 months. Daniel agreed to repay the full $17,000 plus another $5,000 for damages and legal fees. But money wasn't what mattered. What mattered was the clause I insisted Robert include a public statement acknowledging the truth. Daniel fought it more than anything else. He said it would destroy his reputation, that it would ruin his career. But eventually, he signed. A week later, his confession appeared online. It was brief, formal, written by his lawyers, but it was enough. In recent years, I made financial decisions involving my mother's accounts without her consent. I take full responsibility for those actions and for the harm they caused. I am deeply sorry. The comment section exploded. The same people who once called him brave now called him selfish, deceitful, cruel. I didn't reply. I didn't celebrate. I just turned off my phone and went outside. The sky was soft that evening, washed in shades of lavender and pale gold. I stood on my porch and really breathed for what felt like the first time in decades. I wasn't just a woman who had lost her son. I was a woman who had found herself. When the first repayment arrived in my new account, I didn't feel triumph, only completion. The money wasn't wealth. It was a full stop at the end of a long, painful sentence. I used part of it to buy a small house near the coast, 3 hours away. A modest place with white curtains, a garden, and the sound of waves that lulled me to sleep at night. I named it Haven because that's what it felt like. When I signed the deed, my hands didn't shake. I didn't think of Daniel or Vanessa or the empty house I'd left behind. I thought only of the woman sitting across from the notary, the woman who had finally learned that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors you choose to close. Months later, Daniel called one last time. His voice was quiet, almost broken. "Mom," he said, "is there any chance we can talk? Not about money, just talk." I listened for a long moment, feeling the wind through the open window, the scent of salt and roses from my new garden. "I think we've said everything that needed saying," I told him gently. "I wish you peace, Daniel. But peace for me means distance." There was a silence, long, heavy, and then he hung up. I stood there holding the phone, not sad, not angry, just free. That night, I walked to the beach behind my house. The water shimmered under the moonlight, calm and endless. I sat in the sand wrapped in a light shawl, listening to the tide. For years, I had believed that love meant giving until nothing was left. Now I knew better. Love begins with self-respect, and dignity once reclaimed is the kind of wealth no one can steal. I whispered to the sea, "You can't save someone who's drowning by handing them your air." Then I smiled, quiet, steady, unshakable, because after everything, I had finally learned to breathe. Morning light filters through white curtains. The air smells like salt and jasmine. Outside, the waves roll in slow, steady rhythms like breathing. That's how my days begin now, quietly, intentionally. I wake when I want to, not when an alarm or obligation demands it. I pour 1 cup of coffee, not 2. I eat breakfast facing the ocean, not the empty chair where I used to wait for my son to visit. This is my life, now simple, unhurried, entirely my own. Sometimes I still think about the past, but the memories no longer stab. They simply pass through like soft rain on windows. The pain has lost its teeth. What remains is understanding. I understand now that love is not measured by endurance, that sacrificing everything for someone else doesn't make you holy, it just makes you hollow. I used to believe motherhood meant giving without limits, forgiveness without end. But I've learned that real love requires boundaries, because without them, love turns into servitude. In the evenings, I sit on the porch of my small seaside house haven and watch the horizon melt into the water. My neighbor Clara often joins me. She brings lemon pie and updates from the town gossip about fishermen stories of grandchildren. We laugh more than I ever thought I could again. One night, Clara said, "You look lighter, Maggie, like someone took something off your shoulders." I smiled. They did. His name was Daniel. She didn't laugh right away, but then she understood. Every once in a while, I get letters from people who've heard parts of my story, through others, women who whisper my son to, or my daughter did the same. They tell me about money gone missing, houses sold without consent, the way silence became their survival strategy. I tell them what I wish someone had told me years ago. You are not crazy. You are not cruel. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. There's a strange kind of power in saying those words aloud, a healing that comes from calling abuse by its name, especially when it wears the face of family. Sometimes I walk down to the water and talk to the sea like an old friend. I tell it things I never said to anyone, how afraid I used to be of being alone, how much of my worth I tied to being needed. The waves always answer the same way, by coming closer, then gently pulling back, reminding me that even the ocean has boundaries. I think about Daniel, but not with hatred. Hatred keeps you tethered to what hurt you. I think of him as a lesson, one I had to learn the hardest way possible, that love without respect will consume you. That forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes it means release. It took me 62 years to understand that I am enough, that I don't need to be someone's mother provider or safety net to have value. I am a person, a woman who survived abandonment, labor exploitation, and came out not bitter, but whole. Now when the sun dips below the horizon and the sky turns gold over the water, I whisper a prayer, not for Daniel to return, but for him to wake up to face the truth of himself. Whether he ever does or not is no longer my burden, because freedom isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to be your own jailer. I've started volunteering at a small community center nearby, helping other women review their finances, teaching them how to secure their accounts, how to say no without guilt. Sometimes they cry, sometimes they hug me, sometimes they just sit in silence. All of it is healing. When they ask me why I do it, I tell them because peace is contagious. Once you find it, you can't help but share it. At night, when I step outside, the moon reflects on the sea like a promise. I breathe in the salt air and think about all the years I mistook exhaustion for love. Now I know that love doesn't always sound like yes. Sometimes it sounds like enough. I still keep the folder, the one full of bank records, court papers, evidence, in a drawer in my study. Not as a wound, but as proof. Proof that I survived. Proof that dignity once lost can be rebuilt from ashes. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you. If my story reminds you of your own, know this: it's never too late to reclaim your life, your peace, your name. You don't owe anyone your silence. You owe yourself your freedom. And as I sit here in my small house by the sea, sipping my evening tea, I finally understand the simplest truth of all. Peace is not something you find. It's something you stop giving away. Now tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And have you ever learned to say enough? If my story spoke to you, please subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, your dignity is your inheritance. Guard it like gold. With love and respect, Margaret Lewis.